Hello and welcome into this week's NASCAR Gander Outdoors Truck Series Rewind show right here on Racing News Now. As always, I'm your host, Garth Allen. Thank you once again for joining me today. If this is your first time catching a Racing News Now video, consider going down below to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward from RNN. On today's Trucks Rewind, we're looking back at what was supposed to be Saturday's, ended up being Sunday's 11th annual M&Ms 200 presented by Casey's General Stores. 200 laps, 175 miles around the .875 mile Iowa Speedway in Newton, Iowa. Only 4 caution flags in this race, of course 2 of those being stage breaks, so not a lot of incidents happening in this race. A lot of green flag racing in this race. First caution though did happen at the end of stage 1. It wasn't the stage 1 conclusion. We did have a couple laps after this caution. It was for the 10 of Juanma Gonzalez, getting into the wall in turn 4. This set up an interesting end to stage 1. Chandler Smith, in his first Truck Series start, had led the first 55 laps from the pole. He relinquished that lead over this caution because he was having radio issues. He could not hear his team. They could hear him. He couldn't hear them. So he comes down, has that changed out, has to relinquish the lead for that. This left the stage win wide open for everybody that had not been able to catch him, as he had checked out in this first stage. There was nobody going to catch Chandler Smith had this caution not happened. But Matt Crafton led for 3 laps after this caution. Johnny Sauter took the lead with 1 to go in that stage 1. And then Ross Chastain, starting 19th, had made his way all the way up there and makes a 3-wide pass on the outside in 3 and 4, last lap of the stage, around Matt Crafton and Johnny Sauter to take the stage 1 victory. An exciting finish to stage 1, and it would set up the story for the rest of the race. So, of course, as mentioned, Ross Chastain was your winner of stage 1. No incidents in stage 2, at least that would cause a caution. Stage 2 ended at lap 120. Ross Chastain would be your winner of stage 2, leading every lap in stage 2 as well. One more caution in the race, and this was where the drama unfolded in this race. It was lap 139. It was an incident between the 13 of Johnny Sauter and the 16 of Austin Hill. There were 3 separate incidents in this whole situation. Johnny Sauter roughed up Austin Hill into 1 and 2 just a bit, pushed him out of the groove, got by him. Austin Hill apparently did not appreciate this, so a couple laps later when he got back to the 13 of Johnny Sauter, ends up getting into the back of Sauter in 3 and 4, turns Sauter around, Sauter backs into the wall. This did not make Johnny Sauter very happy. Under caution, he hunts down Austin Hill and throws both trucks into the outside wall in turns 1 and 2 under caution. Johnny Sauter would be parked for the rest of the race after this because obviously this was a very unnecessary move. I get it. You're mad that you got wrecked intentionally, but save that for off the track. You don't be using trucks as a weapon. So that would be the end of the race for Johnny Sauter. Austin Hill would continue after this, although with damage, he would continue to the end of the race. But that would be your last caution of the race. 3 lead changes in this race among 4 drivers. As we mentioned, Chandler Smith led the first 55 laps from the pole. Matt Crafton led 3 laps after that. Johnny Sauter led a lap. And then Ross Chastain never gave up the lead after that. He led from lap 60 to lap number 200. But Ross Chastain is not your winner of this race. Ross Chastain's truck failed post-race inspection, and he relinquished this win. The feel-good story of the year, Ross Chastain transitions to Truck Series points, running for a championship now in the Truck Series. He's got to make it to the top 20 in points and win a race to get into the playoffs, and it looked like he had done that. He won his race, and he was about this close to being in the top 20 already with, 5-6 races left until the playoffs, and that is completely stripped away. Apparently the front end of the truck was way low in post-race inspection, way over NASCAR's tolerance levels, and they couldn't let it slip by. So now under NASCAR's new rules for 2019, if your vehicle fails post-race inspection, the win is completely stripped away. So, that being said, let's get into your results. With Ross Chastain not being the winner, that makes Brett Moffitt the winner of the M&Ms 200 without ever having led a lap in this race. He had a fast truck. He was up there with Ross Chastain at the end of the race, but never led a lap in this race. And I'm pretty sure, I haven't looked at this, but I'm pretty confident in saying this is the first time anybody's ever won a NASCAR race without having led a single lap in the race. Because usually, you'd at least have to lead the last lap to win the race. So pretty confident in saying that this is the first time that someone has won a NASCAR race without ever having led a lap. So there's going to be some controversy there, I know. That being said, Brett Moffitt is the official winner of this race, his first win of 2019. So Ross Chastain may not have locked himself into the playoffs, but Brett Moffitt has locked himself into the playoffs now with this win. Ben Rhodes officially comes home in the second position, Harrison Burton in third, Grant Enfinger fourth, and Stuart Friesen rounded out the top 5. Rest of your top 10 were Sheldon Creed, Matt Crafton, Chandler Smith came home in 8th, never was quite able to rebound from getting mired back in the pack from the radio issues. He came home in 8th, Rafael Lessard in 9th, and Todd Gilliland rounded out the top 10. 11th through 20th, Brendan Poole came home in the 11th position. Austin Hill, after his tangle with Johnny Sauter, was able to finish on the lead lap, last truck on the lead lap, in the 12th position. Kyle Benjamin, the highest finishing Nice Motorsports truck when Ross Chastain got DQ'd, he came home in the 13th position in that 45 truck. Riley Herbst was in the 46th this week for Kyle Busch Motorsports. He came home in the 15th position. Natalie Decker came home with a solid 17th place finish, 2 laps off the pace. 21st through 30th, Jesse Little back here in the 22nd position. Johnny Sauter, after being parked, he came home in the 27th position, and this did give him a bit of a hit in the points. The overall points, he is locked in with a win, so really that doesn't matter a lot for him, depending on what NASCAR's overarching penalty after this is going to be. If there is an overarching penalty, that may be it. But I've heard some speculation about some things that could be levied against Johnny Sauter that might make the point situation a little more important for him. We'll see what happens here in the coming days. And final page here, 31st, 32nd, Tyler Ankrum was in the 87 this week, his first race not in the 17 for DGR Crosley. And he ended up starting parking after 17 laps, officially out with brake issues at lap 17. And then Ross Chastain led 141 laps in this race and came across the line first, but officially, unfortunately, is not the winner of this race. He came home in 32nd, and really, even if he hadn't won this race, this was looking like it was going to be a good points day that he needed to get him closer to that top 20 in points, and really it hasn't done much for him in that department. Still is definitely feasible for him to get to the top 20, but this is definitely a blow that that team probably didn't need. But that's your results from the M&Ms 200. So let's head over to the Media Center. Before we hear from your official winner, Brett Moffitt, we are going to hear from Truck Series Managing Director Brad Moran on the official reasoning on why Ross Chastain's truck was disqualified after the race and why that win was taken away from him. And then we'll hear from your official winner of the race, Brett Moffitt.
Yes, basically we have a procedure and rules in place. Trucks are restricted on their ride heights at the front and the rear of the vehicles. Unfortunately, the 44 was low on the front, extremely low. We have a process of what happens at that point. They do get an opportunity to roll around. They put fuel in the vehicle. They air the tires. Give them at least 5 to 10 minutes, roll them back up on, check them a second time. And unfortunately, the 44 did not rise on the front at all. No, the team is allowed to appeal the decision. It's all in the rule book. It is sped up a little more than a normal penalty would be. So there is a process in place that the team can appeal the penalty, and it's expedited to get an answer on it.
Obviously, I was very disappointed. Anyone down in the bullpen probably heard that and put it out already. But it's a big change of emotions, and obviously this is not the way I want to win it. As a race car driver, I still know I got beat on track, which is frustrating. But Back in the beginning of the year when NASCAR implemented this new system, it was to clear up the Tuesday disqualifications and the encumbered wins and let the fans know and everyone else know who actually won the race. So it's I still would rather take the checkered and be the first one to it, but I'll take a win any way I can get it, and that solidifies our playoff spot and $50,000 and a shot at $100,000 or $150,000 next week. So it's all good, and we had a really good Chevrolet today. Just came up one short on track, and thankfully it all worked out.
All right, so let's take a look at your playoff grid before wrapping up here tonight. And a little bit of moving on here. Matt Crafton up a spot to 5th on the playoff grid, up a spot over Stuart Friesen. That's really the only movement we've got on here. There's a bit of movement in the overall points with Johnny Sauter falling a couple spots after his poor finish after being parked. Again, that doesn't make a lot of difference for him given that he is locked in with a win, but with some of the penalties that I have heard thrown around that could be levied against him, that might make a difference. So we'll see what happens here in the coming days with Johnny Sauter. If any sort of penalties are handed down to him, that might make this a little more important. But otherwise, the gap at the cutoff line, it's still pretty big. Harrison Burton back to his teammate Todd Gilliland, still sitting 42 points is the gap there, and it has widened a bit this week, of course, with Burton finishing in the 3rd position. Gilliland back in 10th. Obviously, that gap would widen a bit, and the gap it's getting fairly large at this point. I think without some bad luck from Burton, Gilliland and Sheldon Creed back here, both I think are going to need a win to get into the playoffs this season. As we get ever closer to the playoffs, we're running out of races here. These guys are going to need to get a win, I think, to get into the playoffs. Unless Harrison Burton just goes 2 or 3 races in a row with some really bad luck, I think Gilliland and Creed are both going to need a win here as we wind down the regular season in the trucks. But that's your playoff grid following the M&Ms 200 from Iowa, and I believe that'll do it for us on this Trucks Rewind. Xfinity Rewind coming up shortly following this for their race today from Iowa, the Circuit City 250. And that'll be it for this weekend. Diecast review as usual coming up on Wednesday. I believe, trying to look into the case here to see what's next. I believe it'll be Chase Elliott's Dover win from last season, so that'll be a cool one to talk about. No, wait, I take that back. Speaking of Ross Chastain, it will be Ross Chastain on Diecast Review this week, his Xfinity win from last season from Las Vegas. So that'll be this week's Diecast Review, for those of you that are interested in Diecast Review coming up on Wednesday. And then, of course, we will be back at the track this weekend with ARCA for their race from Gateway. And, of course, that is a double header with the trucks. So we'll be giving you coverage from the truck race that day as well. That is all a one-day show for both series on Saturday, so that'll be a jam-packed day of a lot of stuff happening from Gateway in a short period of time, so that's some stuff to look forward to here in the coming days. So if you haven't done it already, you need to go down below, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward from RNN. While you're down there, why don't you hit that big thumbs up button if you like the video. It is much appreciated when you do. But at that, this has been the NASCAR Gander Outdoors Truck Series Rewind Show. I'm Garth Allen for Racing News Now.